What's up, everyone? Welcome to the video. We are here talking week 6 of the NFL season on DraftKings and FanDuel. And if this just so happens to be your first time here, what's up? My name is Chris Pennell. I break down NASCAR and NFL DFS each and every single week on this channel. And I'm also a contributor over on Stochastic. So if you've seen my face before, but this is your first time here, that might be the reason why. And what I typically do in these videos, we'll go through a player pool here by each position. And I'm not going to talk about everybody in the slate. That would take way too long. And then we'll build a lineup as we progress through it, maybe more so as a single entry tournament type build. And then I'll run the optimizer at the end, which has my projections and ownership projections, which I do update throughout the weekend. And if you would like to use that for yourself, link can be found down below in the description for that, for access to all the tools that I do have to offer. If you think this sounds all fine and dandy and you're going to keep returning, you might as well hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you're notified whenever I post new content. If you do enjoy today's video, make sure you leave a like down below and feel free to leave a comment saying whatever you want to say. Just try not to bully me too hard because I still have some feelings. And don't forget to check out the sponsor of the show, PrizePicks, because they do make these videos possible. And I've seen a lot of you sign up recently using the promo code CPEN, so I do appreciate that. It goes a long way for both of us. But when you do that, you can get an instant deposit match bonus up to $100. There's no strings attached. It is free money. Please use it to your advantage using the link down below in the description, or head over to prizepicks.com and make sure you use promo code CPEN when you do sign up. But it's seriously a super fun site to play on. I live in Florida. I can't bet legally on like a DraftKings or FanDuel sportsbook, but I can play PrizePicks, and it's awesome, and I highly recommend it. But with that being said, I think that'll be it for the plug. So without further ado, let's dive right into it. And as always, we will start with the quarterback position. And if you do want access to the sheet here, link down below for that. It's right by the orange bubble. You can't miss it. And Patreon does not charge you on the first of the month anymore. It's when you sign up. It's a 30-day cycle. So I know we're in the middle of the month. So if you are on the edge, that is no longer a concern. But I do have projections, optimizer, and the entire sheets, everything color coded nice and neat in the entire player pool, not just the few that I show you guys on YouTube. But anyway, we got Josh Allen up top. He's the most expensive quarterback on both sites here, but I don't think anyone should have any questions about that. He definitely deserves it. I think Patrick Mahomes is a better real-life quarterback, but for fantasy purposes, Josh Allen is definitely the numero uno with his passing and rushing upside. It's just hard to beat his floor and his insanely high ceiling. Plus, the Bills have the highest implied team total in the slate here at 28.25. Only 2.5 point spread on the road in KC, and this game is going to be an absolute banger. I wish it was a Sunday night game, but at the same time, I'm glad it's not because it's going to be on the main slate for DFS, and we can play the heck out of it. Now, it's going to be high owned, so you have to keep that in mind. But at the same time, we can still play this game and use some other contrarian options to build around it so we're not full on the chalk here. But looking at Allen's numbers this season, I don't think I have to tell you that he's good at football, but if you want me to, I guess I'll do it anyway. 330 yards per game, nearly 3 passing touchdowns, throwing the ball close to 40 times per game, 8.3 yards per attempt. And the great thing here that makes Josh Allen so valuable for DFS and fantasy football in general is this rushing upside, over 40 rushing yards per game, half a rushing touchdown, 4.4 yards per carry. And the Chiefs defensively have not been that great this year. They're 26th versus fantasy quarterbacks, bottom half in league DVOA versus the pass. This is a long-winded way of me saying, yeah, let's play some Josh Allen this week. Looking at the projections, I have him at 27.3. I don't think I ever have quarterbacks that high. So he is definitely grading out the best for me. If you were playing cash games, I'd highly recommend jamming him in. It's really not that hard to do, and I just want a lot of pieces of this game. 54-point over-under, close spread, should be a great one. And the last time these guys faced off, it was probably one of the best games I've ever seen in my life. And if you want to stack this game but not eat up the chalk with Josh Allen, you can do that by rostering Patrick Mahomes for $200 less. Now, he does not project nearly as well, and this is a tougher matchup versus the Buffalo defense, but he is playing at home. And I don't really care about matchups for the Chiefs offense anyway. They can usually get the job done no matter what. He still has Travis Kelce to get the ball to. Obviously, no more Tyreek Hill, which always kind of hurts just big home run plays, but he's still been just fine with the likes of MVS, Juju Smith-Schuster, Mecole Hardman, whatever else they want to throw on the field. And he's not going to have nearly the ownership as Josh Allen. So if you're looking from a tournament perspective, Mahomes is not going to be forgotten about, but he's not going to be even close to Allen. And if you saw my projections, I have him for a handful of points less than Allen. So if you are running an optimizer, he's not going to pop up as much. But in tournaments, if you're hand building like a 3-max, I definitely want to try to get a Patrick Mahomes lineup in, because if he outperforms Josh Allen, you're definitely going to have some great leverage on the field. And I could talk about the numbers all you want, but he's pretty good at football. Josh Allen's pretty good at football. I can mention the matchup here. So the Bills are allowing the third fewest points per game to the quarterback position. So it's definitely not a great spot in terms of that, but I'm expecting a high scoring game, and the Chiefs are in Arrowhead. They always seem to put up a lot of points. So yeah, I like Patrick Mahomes in tournaments. We can go there in cash games though. Allen is going to be your cash QB this week if you're not going Geno Smith. Kyler Murray at $7,300. I like this game in general. I think the Buffalo KC game is number one. Then number two, I think, is this Arizona Seattle game. in Seattle. 50.5 point over under, 2.5 point spread here. And Murray, while I don't really like using him, I have not played him yet this year. He's only averaging 1 passing touchdown per game this season, throwing the ball nearly 40 times per game, but only 5.8 yards per attempt. But he can run the ball, about half the rushing yards that Josh Allen gets per game for designed runs, and is always able to usually find the end zone here and there in the rushing touchdown department. But this is a great matchup versus Seattle, the 31st DVA versus the pass, and 25th versus fantasy quarterback. So out of the fact that he's got passing and rushing upside, he's got some easy guys to stack with Rondell Moore, who's pretty cheap, Marquise Brown, and then Zach Ertz. It's just mainly a tournament play. I'm not sure if I'm going to get the Kyler Murray in my 3 max build, but if I was building like 20 lineups or 150, I'm definitely going to get to some Kyler Murray, but he's probably my least favorite quarterback of the 5 that I am talking about right here. And then going cheap, somehow we have Tom Brady still at $6,300. I know he didn't have a great game last week, but this is still a really cheap price point for a guy like Tom Brady in a great matchup versus Pittsburgh. They are on the road. I wish they were at home, but they're still 8-point favorites, 26.5 implied team total. And it's super easy to stack Tom Brady. I mean, there's 2 main guys in Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. It looks like Cameron Brate might return this week. I don't think he has officially cleared concussion protocol, but he did get a full practice, I believe, the past 2 weeks. Or past 2 days, I should say. I know that really doesn't matter too much. Otton was just fine as a replacement. And then Leonard Fournette had like 10 or 12 targets last week as well. So we know where the ball is going to go in this offense. And it's really not that expensive as a stack. And the Buccaneers have thrown the ball nearly 40 times per game this year. While the touchdowns haven't been there, he's still getting close to 300 passing yards per game. And if you're looking at the fantasy points allowed per game for the Pittsburgh Steelers, it is the 6th most in the league. And they just got torched by Josh Allen, who had around 400 some yards and multiple touchdowns, 2 big plays as well. So liking Tom Brady at this price point, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to make it a point to get him in my 3 max build. And then we have Geno Smith for cheap here at $5,700 facing the Arizona Cardinals defense, which isn't really much of a defense this season. They're 27 DVA versus the pass and 23rd versus fantasy quarterbacks. And somehow, some way, Geno Smith has actually been pretty solid this year. We saw him break the slate versus Detroit. And while the Cardinals defense isn't as bad as Detroit, Geno Smith is very easy to stack with. It's DK Metcalf, it's Tyler Lockett, and both those guys aren't overly expensive. I believe Lockett's in the 5K range and DK Metcalf is in the 6K range. So it's very, very easy to double stack here. And he's completing nearly 81% of his passes this year, 8.3 yards per attempt. And he's got a QBR of 113 this season, which is actually better than Josh Allen. Now, do I think this is going to keep up throughout the entire season? Probably not. But for right now, at this price point and the matchup that we're getting in a 50.5 point over under, below 6K, Geno is certainly in play. And moving over to our lineup, since everyone and their mom is going to play Josh Allen, let's be a little bit different here. Let's roster Patrick Mahomes. He's $200 less, so we save a little bit of money there. And we'll cut the ownership at least in half. And moving on to the running backs, usually I have like 3 or 4 guys here that I think are somewhat in play. And even then, I don't like them that much. But we actually have a good amount of running backs to use this week. And we start top with Saquon Barkley, $7,700 DraftKings, $8,800 on FanDuel. Facing Baltimore here, he's a 5.5 point dog. I actually like playing Barkley when he's a favorite more often than not. Because if you look at the historical numbers, that tends to be when he puts up his best games. But I'm not going to look into it that much. I think he's still a good play. The volume's going to be there. He's using the passing game, close to a 20% target share in this offense, close to 5 targets per game, and nearly 20 carries on the ground. So if you're looking for a volume back and you have the money for him, I have no issue at all with Saquon Barkley. And Baltimore is currently 26 DVA versus the run this season and allowing a lot of catches per game to the running back position, which we know Saquon Barkley is definitely capable of doing, especially if they are trailing this game. Let's say Lamar Jackson goes nuts and they're trailing. Saquon Barkley should get several dump-offs, which is great on a PPR set like DraftKings, less important over on FanDuel. Then we have Leonard Fournette, $7,400. He is kind of the not as fun version of Saquon Barkley, but he gets somewhat similar volume and is using the passing game heavily. Had 11 targets last week. I want to say he got almost 10 of them, had a huge fantasy day. But this is a great spot for Fournette. He checks just about every single box for me besides being the home favorite. He's an away favorite, but still by 8 points. High implied team total at 26.5. He's getting nearly 15 carries per game and also 6 targets per game, which equates to close to a 15% target share. So yeah, I like him a lot. The floor is very safe, and if they get around the red zone, he's going to be the guy that has the best chance of punching it in. So if you like the Buccaneers offense and you're not stacking up the passing game, I'd try to get to some shares of Leonard Fournette. I think he's very, very safe overall. Alvin Kamara, $6,700. It's pretty much a common theme with these first 3 running backs. They're both going to get you around 15 plus carries, and they're both going to be involved in the passing game, which makes them incredibly safe, high floors, and high ceilings. Kamara had nearly 200 all-purpose yards last week, close to 100 receiving yards, had over 100 on the ground, I believe. It's just Taysom Hill stole all the touchdowns. Kamara had a good fantasy day. I want to say close to 30 fantasy points, probably a little bit lower than that, but man, it could have been a lot better besides Taysom Hill stealing all the touchdowns, but I think he's playable in both formats here, cash games and tournaments. Jeff Wilson is boring, but you can play him if you want at $6,200. He's probably going to get you 60, 70 plus on the ground. It just really comes down to if he's going to score a touchdown or not. Because if Wilson does not score a touchdown, he's just not that involved in the passing game. We're seeing less than 2 targets per game this year at a 6% target share. But this is a great spot. He's not a home favorite running back, but he's a 5.5 point favorite on the road in Atlanta with a 25 point implied team total. If he can get you those 60, 70 yards on the ground and punch it into the end zone, there's obviously upside for more. You could see 100 yards in this game depending on how it goes. But if he does not score that touchdown, you probably won't be too happy with the output. Stevenson at $6,000. I'm projecting him to be the highest owned player on the slate. I currently have him around, I think, 18, 19 points. Damian Harris is not officially out, but it's not sounding that great for him. But even if he is in, I still think we can play Stevenson. We played him last week with the assumption that Damian Harris was playing, and he did. He just happened to get hurt during the game, and Stevenson had a fantastic week. But they're actually 2.5 point dogs on the road in Cleveland. And this defense has been absolutely putrid this year versus running backs. Dead last, 32nd DVA versus the run, close to 30 DraftKings points per game, which is the 6th most on the season. Over 120 rushing yards and over a rushing touchdown. Assuming Harris is out, even if he does play, he's probably going to be pretty limited, at least I would imagine. Stevenson is basically the lock of the slate, in my opinion. Projects out super well, and he's not that expensive at all. Breece Hall, $5,800, had a bit of a breakout game last week. I think 18 carries. Only had 2 targets, but for about 100 yards, pretty much 200 all-purpose yards. Looked fantastic, and we knew at some point the time was coming for Breece Hall to take over this offense or take over the backfield and look good, and he has certainly been doing that. So I like the volume that he's getting. He's involved in the passing game. $5,000 if you want to get away from some Stevenson chalk. I don't think Breece Hall is going to be super low owned or anything, but being sandwiched kind of in between guys like Kenneth Walker and Stevenson should keep his ownership down a little bit, so I think he's a fine pivot option. And then Kenneth Walker, $5,400. Rashad Penny is out for this season, so Walker's going to fill in to be the main back in this offense, and they drafted him for a reason, so it's going to be the Walker show for the most part, and I want all the exposure I can to this game. Running backs, wide receivers, quarterbacks, you name it, I want a piece of it. Seattle is a 2.5 point dog at home here, but at $5,400 for an RB1 who's got some talent, I will take it. Don't really care about the matchup too much. Cardinals aren't elite versus the run, but they are a top half in the league, at least, is allowing the fewest points per game to the running back position, only 76 rushing yards per game. But I'll take the volume here. The price is too low. I'd expect them to be very chalky in cash games. Most people will start their lineups with Stevenson and Walker. Then on the flip side of this game, we have Eno Benjamin, $4,600. James Conner is not officially out yet, but he has not been practicing. I'm going to assume he is out. And we also have Williams listed as doubtful, so we can pretty much just assume he is out now as well. So we basically have Eno as the RB1 in an offense with a 26.5 point implied team total as a 2.5 point favorite and a 50.5 over under. We could look at the numbers this year. They don't mean anything. He's going to be the RB1 this week. And yeah, that's got value below $5,000. So if you're in a pinch, need some salary, definitely looks pretty good. Plus, this is a great matchup. Seattle's allowing the 2nd most points per game to the running back position, and they're also 24th DVOA versus the run. And moving back over to our lineup, since we avoided the Josh Allen chalk, I'm not saying Patrick Mahomes is going to be 1% owned in this slate. He's definitely going to have some ownership, but at least we afforded ourselves to be able to maybe get in some more chalkier running backs that I think are in great spots just because we avoided Allen. So if we had Allen in this lineup, I think going the Stevenson Walker out would probably be a bad idea because that's how everyone's going to start their lineups. That's when I'd start to pivot to guys like maybe a Jeff Wilson or a Breece Hall just to get away from the absolute mega chalk. But since we have Mahomes, let's just try this. And like I said, this is more so of a single entry build, not a million maker lineup. So we'll go with Mahomes, Stevenson, and Walker to start it off. $5,100 left for the remaining spots. Factor in a cheap defense. We can make this work for sure. And moving on to the wide receiver position, as I always say, we can break down the matchups. We can break down the quarterback versus wide receiver stuff. I don't really think it matters too much. It all just comes down to who we stacking, what games we stacking, who's my run back options, and who's my pairings with the quarterback that I have, because we got to correlate our lineups here. So, yeah, sure, matchups are fun to talk about, but in the grand scheme of things, usually good wide receivers beat out matchups no matter who it is against. So I don't really try to get too deep into it, but we'll try to go through this quickly here because there's always going to be a lot of viable wide receivers. So up top, we have Stephon Diggs, $84. If you want to play Cooper Kupp, be my guest. He's just super expensive. doesn't really fit the builds that I want to go with this week. But if you're using Josh Allen, you're using Mahomes, Diggs works either way because he's either your stacking option with Josh Allen or he's your run back option with Patrick Mahomes. He is expensive though, so if you're using Travis Kelce, it might be hard to fit him in as well, but Diggs obviously going to be the top option here. Good matchup versus KC. Obviously, I love this game in general, and if you're, let me pull up the player stats per game here, a little bit easier to read and a little bit more important, but a 26% target share. He's Josh Allen's number one. I think he has a great game versus KC. It's just a matter of being able to afford him, but if you are playing cash games, I'd recommend trying to get him in, but it's not that hard to do so. Hollywood Brown, if you are stacking that Seattle-Arizona game, I prefer using Geno as my quarterback over Kyler just because he's a little bit cheaper and I feel like they have somewhat similar upside. But Brown can definitely be the run back option, and this is the last week for him before DeAndre Hopkins is back, but he's been a target hog the past few weeks and has actually been one of the most consistent wide receivers in fantasy football and close to a 40% market share of the team's air yards on this team. Mike Evans, if you're using Tom Brady, he's an obvious option there. I don't think he's as safe as Chris Godwin, but he's definitely got a really, really high ceiling. DK Metcalf, just an obvious pairing option with Geno Smith. Great matchup versus this Arizona defense that I don't think is going to offer too much resistance. Gabe Davis at $6,500 in the specific lineup that we are building. I don't think we're going to be able to afford Stephon Diggs because I'm going to try to jam in Travis Kelce since I have Patrick Mahomes. But Gabe Davis is a nice secondary option there. And I know he had a huge week last week, but he's definitely not seeing nearly the amount of targets that guys like Stephon Diggs see. But he is capable of those big plays. And last time they played Kansas City, he went absolutely nuclear. I don't remember the exact point total, but I want to say it was close to 50. I mean, Davis had an absolute monster game. That's kind of the upside that he'll offer you each and every single week, but the floor is a little bit lower. Chris Godwin, safe option. If you can't get to Mike Evans, he's about $1,000 cheaper, and he's going to get peppered with targets, and it's a great matchup versus Pittsburgh. Tyler Lockett was going to be one of the highest owned players on the entire slate. Did pop up on the injury report, but assuming he is good to go, he's seeing 8 targets per game, over 6 catches, 81 yards, and I believe he had 2 touchdowns last week? I know he had the nice bomb into the end zone. I forget if he had 2 or not, but I definitely like Tyler Lockett here. He's been great, and for some reason, DraftKings just does not like him. I mean, they keep putting him cheap, and we will keep playing him close to a 40% market share of the team's air yards in this offense. Chris Olave, I think everyone in the Saints is questionable. It seems like a wide receiver. Mike Thomas is questionable. Chris Olave is questionable. I thought I saw somebody else questionable, but I don't think Michael Thomas is going to play. Olave seems like he is going in the right direction, and he was having a good week last week. And if you watch the Prize Picks video, we hit on everything besides the Olave prop, and he was actually so close to getting, I think he only needed 10 more yards, but then he got the concussion and couldn't finish the game. But that was unfortunate, but he still got the touchdown. But he's seeing 8 targets per game, 41% market share of the team's air yards, which leads the entire NFL, and I believe that's even with just missing a portion of the game last week. So I like him at $5,500. If Thomas is out, you can still play him if Thomas is in, but either way. And Jacoby Myers here at $5,300, 9 targets per game. He's getting his quarterback back, 32% target share in the season, 40% market share of the team's air yards. I hate playing Patriots because this offense is super boring. But we are playing a lot of Stevenson this week, and Jacoby Myers is a fine option, but definitely not a must-play by any means. But for the targets that he gets at this price point, and I would say a pretty average to above-average matchup versus the Cleveland Browns, he is certainly going to be in play for me. If you're using Mahomes, Juju Smith-Schuster is a cheap pairing option. He hasn't been exciting this year by any means, has not gotten to the end zone, but sees about 6 targets per game. It's fine, 19% target share in the Chiefs offense. Romeo Doubs at $4,800. He's been fine in this offense. I'm projected for around 13 to 14 points, and that's not bad at his price point. Not expecting him to be super high owned, but for a guy that sees around 6 targets per game from Aaron Rodgers, that's going to have some fantasy relevance. George Pickens at $4,600. I think he's actually a pretty good tournament cheap play this week because I do think MVS and Romeo Doubs will be higher owned, so I think Pickens is a nice pivot option in the lower 4K range, and Rondale Moore is going to be pretty chalky as well. But if you are stacking up the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with guys like Tom Brady, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, I think Pickens is your best run back option because it seems like he's got a pretty good connection with Pickett. I'm not sure if it's because they both have Pick in their name. That might have something to do with it, but he's seen 8 targets the past 2 weeks. I mean, you know the talent is definitely there for him. Then we have MVS at $4,500. If you can't quite get the Juju, I think MVS is a fine option there. He sees about similar targets per game, 5 to 6. Had a good game last week, nearly 100 receiving yards. He definitely has big play upside versus this Bills defense. And then if you're looking for the cheap chalk wide receiver this week, I think it's going to be Rondale Moore here at $4,200. In the few games he's played this year, he's averaging 6.5 targets per game on 5 catches. Same story as last year where the ADOT's not going to be super high, but if you're playing on a site like DraftKings where, just a catch can boost you up by a point, that's definitely going to be important to you. And at $4,200, there is not really anything in the cheap range for wide receivers this week. And I have him projected for 12.64 points, which is 3x value. That's the best point per dollar number out of all these wide receivers we were talking about currently. And the matchup here is pretty good versus Seattle because they're second to last DVOA versus the pass. And moving back over to our lineup, I would love to play Stephon Diggs. The problem is, though, if we play him and we play Travis Kelce as well, because I'm playing Mahomes, so I feel like I pretty much trapped into playing Travis Kelce. That leaves me $3,600 left, which, yes, I know it's possible throwing the cheapest defense, but we don't have any good 3K wide receivers this week. If we had a good 3K wide receiver, I would do it, but the lowest I really want to go is Rondale Moore. Maybe something will pop up later this weekend, but I just don't think we're going to be able to afford Stephon Diggs, unfortunately. So since I want a run back option in this Chiefs and Bills game, and I can't afford Diggs, the next guy I would want to roster is Gabe Davis here, $6,500. And I promise I'm not point chasing from last week. I mean, it's nice to see what he did last week with the 98-yard touchdown. He also had the one-handed catch for 50-yard touchdown, 35 fantasy points. We know his upside. He killed the Chiefs last time they played. That doesn't mean really anything, but we know the upside's there. $6,500. I need a bill. I need someone. I want to play Singletary, so we'll play Gabe Davis at I'm not sure it's a fair price point. It seems a little bit alleviated from what he did last week, but it's all right. This is just for entertainment purposes only. Please don't copy and paste this lineup, guys. I'm just trying to see what fits. And I would like one of the Chiefs wide receivers as well. And MVS, I believe, is a little bit cheaper than Juju. Juju's at 52. I want to say MVS is 47, if I remember correctly. Or 4,500, so even better. And last week, he did have 8 targets for 90 yards. I don't think he scored a touchdown yet this year, but at some point it's going to happen, and he's got some big play upside. So for a tournament build, I don't mind that. We have around $5,000 left per player with the 4 spots that we have left. And moving on to the tight end position, there's really only 4 I like. If you want to punt with a 3K option, by all means, go for it. But these are the 4 that I would single out in a lineup. So up top, we have Travis Kelce for obvious reasons. He scored 4 touchdowns last week. I don't think he broke 30 yards. So no, that's not going to keep up where he's going to score 4 touchdowns per game. But I also don't think he's only going to get you 20-some yards per game as well. I mean, last time they played Buffalo, I know Buffalo's been pretty tough on tight ends the past few seasons, but it's Travis Kelce. He's the best tight end in the league. And Mahomes is going to get the ball to him, and I just want all the pieces I can to this game. Mark Andrews at $7,000. If you can't quite afford Kelce, but you want to pay a premium for a tight end, Andrews is definitely in consideration here. Now, he doesn't have quite the floor as Travis Kelce, but he's got a pretty high ceiling, and he also is good almost every single week. I mean, we're talking 9 targets per game, a 33% target share. Definitely Lamar Jackson's number 1. And I don't think anybody's going to play Lamar this week because you have Mahomes and you have Josh Allen up top. So if you're looking to get really contrarian, I know we didn't talk about him, but Lamar is definitely an option. I mean, he could certainly break this slate of low ownership, especially if this Buffalo KC game happens to bust. Then we have Zach Ertz at $4,900 facing off versus Seattle, who can be pretty leaky versus tight ends. We have a high implied team total here. He's seeing 8 targets per game, which I know shows up red. It's just because all these other tight ends get peppered with targets. But if you had the entire tight end player pool here, 8 targets would look pretty darn good. Close to a 20% target share, and Seattle just does not have a good pass defense. And then we have Tyler Higbee at $4,600, who I think a lot of people will go with in cash games. Not too scared of this Panthers defense. It's mainly just all about the targets here. Seeing 9.2 per game on a 25% target share. I know the Rams offense and Matthew Stafford aren't as good as they were last season, but if you're going to give me a tight end that sees nearly double-digit targets per game below 5K, I'll take it. And then always my favorite thing to talk about is defense here. I never spend up. So the first thing I always do is I scroll all the way down, look at some Vegas totals, and see which one looks the most viable. So the Panthers defense, while they are 10-point dogs, it's only a 41.5 point over-under. I think they're playable at $2,400 because we know Matthew Stafford is always good for some sacks and some turnovers. So as long as they don't just give up 30-plus points, as long as I can get a few of those to get you like 5 points, I will take it. I haven't projected for around 6.8. I mean, they're the best point per defense on the slate, but they're the cheapest. It could certainly go south, though. Not going to play any of these defenses. It seems like a really bad time. The Saints versus the Bengals. Definitely some potential sacks there, and Joe Burrow can certainly turn the ball over. Only a 43-point over-under at home. 2-point dogs here. I don't think the Saints look bad at $2,800. I also don't think it's tough. I mean, these aren't great, but all these low total games are playable. It's just no defense really stands out to me this week, so I would really just say throw in whoever fits. And moving over to our lineup, the first thing we're going to do is plug in Travis Kelce to complete our pairings with Patrick Mahomes. So we have the Mahomes, Kelce, MVS stack ran back with Gabe Davis. I don't think that's going to be extremely popular in tournaments because a lot of people will go the Allen and Stephon Diggs route. So we have under $4,000 left. Let's just throw in the cheapest defense possible. I don't care. I know they're 10-point dogs, but whatever. Just give me some sacks. Give me an interception or 2. I'll take it. $4,700 left for the last 2 spots. I would like to play Rondale Moore. I know he's going to be pretty chalky this week, but he just opened up some salary for me at $4,200, and I think the targets are going to be secure. And that leaves me $5,200 left for the last spot. So Not really sure what kind of range that leaves me in. If you wanted a triple stack, you could go with Juju here, but I'm not sure I'm the biggest fan of that, just because Mahomes really does spread the ball around. I know they're going to get targets. It's just I don't really want a triple stack for this build. We could go with DJ Moore if you want, but I think my favorite option here would probably be Romeo Doubs at $4,800. That's going to leave some salary on the table, but I mean, he's not the most consistent player, but the upside is certainly there. So if we plug in Dobbs, you could take out the Panthers defense, upgrade it a little bit, go with the Saints. That's not a bad looking build. Now, again, please don't copy and paste this, just trying to see what fits, but many ways you can go on this slate, but I don't think that looks too bad. And like I said earlier, going to run the optimizer here. Now, there's no group settings, no randomness, nothing like that. We're going to raw dog it, just see who the projections like the most as of right now on Friday morning. And if you would like access to this to build your own lineups, again, link is down below in the description for that. Pretty fair price compared to most in the industry. And it looks like we finally got our 152 crunch. And I'm going to be honest, that first line that pops up does not look bad at all. It almost looks like a cash game lineup for sure. But let's pull up the players tab here. Yeah, 100% Ramondre Stevenson, Kenneth Walker at 99%, Rondell Moore at 96%. Again, if you are someone that builds 150 lineups, you need to set exposure caps and things like that because you do not want to go that heavy on players on a slate, but I am not surprised at all who was popping here. I mean, this makes complete sense to me. Allen, Moore, Walker, Stevenson, Lockett, Higbee, Diggs, pretty much all of the chalk. So no surprises there. Now, if we pull up the teams, here's popping the most. A lot of Seattle, a lot of Buffalo, a lot of New England, Arizona, Los Angeles, all teams that we certainly talked about. Players, you're looking at games, Cleveland, New England, that's because of Stevenson. So yeah, not surprising at all. It's always nice when the projections and stuff agree with your internal thoughts and the people we talk about in the video at least. With that being said, that's all I got for you guys this week. If you did enjoy, please leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you're brand new. I'll be here all season long, not going anywhere. If you did enjoy today's content, there's always going to be more in the future. But I wish you all the best of luck, and I'll see you all next time.